Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on getting ready for Giving Tuesday. We're very happy to have Giving Tuesday UK with us today. And we were also planning, as you have seen from my promo, to have Giving Tuesday also the American side, Kathleen, but unfortunately there was a last minute change, but luckily we do have her slides. So it should be a good opportunity to hear from both sides of Giving Tuesday, how we can get organized and how we can really participate with our organization. So I'm really happy to have today Gronier Matthews, the Giving Tuesday UK lead. And I am Teresa Litza, the social media expert at Lightful. Hello, Gronier.
Hi, Teresa.
And in case you don't know, we are Lightful. We are a social media company working at Tech for Good Solutions. And we built the first social media platform for charities and nonprofits. And we're happy to talk more about that if you want to find more details. I'm seeing some messages at the chat. Feel free to ask anything during the webinar, and we'll make sure we answer everything in the end in our Q&A. Today, we're going to talk about Giving Tuesday, starting with an introduction, what it is, how you can really join, and all the different ways you can really participate. And we'll look at some creative call to action, how to move your audience into actionable steps, whether you define that as a donation or something different. And we'll look at all the different ways you can do that. And then we'll get into the planning. How can you get organized for Giving Tuesday? What can you do over the next weeks? And how can you start planning your content and your content calendar for the day? Gronier will also talk about the Giving Tuesday pledge, how you can really join Giving Tuesday on the day. And then we'll have some additional resources and takeaway tips so that you can start planning your Giving Tuesday campaign. So now it's time to hear more from Gronier and have an introduction really about Giving Tuesday, what it is and what we really need to know about that.
Thank you, Teresa. Well, as Teresa said, my name is Grania Matthews, and I lead the Giving Tuesday campaign here in the UK. It's really great to be here and to see so many people of you tuning in to hear about Giving Tuesday. So the big day is coming. We're less than 3 weeks away. I would like to take this opportunity to share a little bit about the evolution of Giving Tuesday over the years and some practical ways charities can be creative and create success on Giving Tuesday in such a short time frame. Giving Tuesday started as a day for anyone, anywhere to give, and it's grown into the largest social movement of all time by reach. There's activity happening in every country and continent around the world, including Antarctica. You know the story by now. It started as a simple idea. Black Friday and Cyber Monday were so hugely popular, the team in America thought, what about adding Giving Tuesday? Could you add a day that reversed the trend? After all this consumerism, create a day where people would give back. It was novel, in that it was designed from the start to encourage people to grab it and to take it somewhere new. It's a story about people. What supercharged Giving Tuesday was small communities, families, people all around the US and around the world saying, I'm going to make this part of my annual tradition. What was so interesting about Giving Tuesday, as we've watched it grow, was from the very first days, it was a story of other people stepping up and raising their hands and saying, I want to make this idea better. When the US team first started thinking about Giving Tuesday, some of the questions they asked were, how can we redefine the word community for the 21st century? What does community even mean in an age where there are no boundaries? And it all started with people thinking out of the box and pushing what's possible. So we're working at scale. For the first time in 2017, Giving Tuesday was the largest online giving day of the year on many of the biggest platforms in the States. Initially, that was by number of donors, but now on several platforms, it's the largest online giving day of the year in terms of donors and in terms of dollars. A few years ago, the Network for Good did an analysis of their not-for-profit clients, looking at every nonprofit that fundraised on their platform in the month of December. Nonprofits that did not participate in Giving Tuesday raised on average $1,200. Not-for-profits that participated in Giving Tuesday raised more than $17,000. Of course, there was a concern that Giving Tuesday was just cannibalizing the end of year giving in the States. The folks that were taking the check they were going to write on December the 31st, which is traditionally the most popular day of the year for donations in the United States, and dating it for Giving Tuesday because they were excited by the hashtag. But the data is showing that that's not what's happening. Giving Tuesday is addictive. So we know Giving Tuesday is big, but why? On November the 27th last year, not-for-profits in the US raised 400 million online in just one day, and that's just a conservative estimate. We're not able to track offline fundraising. And that was in a year where low dollar individual giving was down. In fact, it was down every day of last year except for Giving Tuesday, which tells us something about Giving Tuesday. It is causing a spike in giving that is similar to the kind of giving that happens after a natural disaster. But Giving Tuesday is the only thing that exists that spurs that kind of giving based on something positive rather than in reaction to something terrible happening. It's exactly for this reason that Giving Tuesday has resonated around the world. In a world where we can't agree on much, the one thing that brings all of humanity together is the value of generosity and the joy that it can bring. People find tremendous joy in giving. And when something brings you that amount of joy, you want to do it again and again. When Giving Tuesday crossed oceans, it proved that generosity is a universal value. Part of what Giving Tuesday has accomplished is bringing a conversation about generosity into the public sphere in a way that it just wasn't there before. We are not a world that's divided into people who have and people who need. The Giving Tuesday team truly believes that everybody has something to give. In Nairobi last year, there were children in the slums who were painting rocks with messages of goodwill and kindness, and then they were hiding them so that other people would find them. In Venezuela, by the time Giving Tuesday came around, their political crisis was well underway. Between hyperinflation, power cuts, and shortages of food and medicine, campaign leaders were not in a position to ask people to give money to charity. Instead, on Giving Tuesday in Venezuela, team leaders created a network of non-fundraising activities, including giving out empanadas and hugs that fed not only the stomach, but the soul. And this year, the US team are thrilled to launch Giving Tuesday Kids, led by 12-year-old Chloe Thompson and a team of incredible young do-gooders. They're challenging kids all over the world to give back after school on December the 3rd, and you can check that out on givingtuesdaykids.org. People want to be valued beyond what they can donate. They want to be valued for their skills, for their voice, for their beliefs and values, and for their ability to move the needle on a cause in a range of ways. Particularly true when we think about young givers. We need to stop seeing supporters in this old power way, that their job is simply to give us money so that we can solve problems. We need to stop seeing people as donors and start seeing them as owners. We need to say to ourselves, how do we mobilize these people who want to help, who want to do more than simply give their money, but to give their time, give their voice, to give their ideas? Giving Tuesday is a moment that gives them the opportunity to do just that.
And it's exactly the case, as Gronia says, that Giving Tuesday is all about giving. And what's also interesting is that there are many creative calls to action. As you can imagine, the obvious call to action is to donate for your cause. But what's really interesting is to see all the different ways that you can activate your community towards social change. We're looking at some ideas just to help you see all the different ways you can just join Giving Tuesday and find some inspiration for your organization. So you could, for example, encourage your volunteers or anyone in your network to fundraising for your cause. So peer-to-peer fundraisers have been very popular for Giving Tuesday, and it's a great way to make your donors feel really involved to help you raise the funds for important causes. And this is a great example also for the social proof. Giving Tuesday started as an online movement, which means that social proof, or else having someone else talking about your organization and your campaign, can be a great motivation to encourage others also to join. So for example, Camp Kisem, they raised over $2 million from 40,000 donors, which was very impressive that everything happened during Giving Tuesday. The team actually credits their 5,000 college student volunteers who prompted the campaign on social media. The volunteers received training months ahead from Giving Tuesday on how to use their fundraising tools. And it was really impressive because they started understanding how the templates, the graphics, the campaign timelines, and all the toolkits can really make a campaign successful. And it's a great reminder for everyone on how you can really bring everyone together and motivate them in order to raise funds for your cause or just to achieve something great on the day. Another case that's also interesting is making sure that Giving Tuesday is not just one day of giving. You also ideally want to take it into more regular giving with your donors. So you could inspire, for example, something that starts on Giving Tuesday and could easily become a hashtag First Tuesday Giving. So this way it could be a monthly giving or any other sort of regular giving on repeat donations. And what's interesting in that case is to just have a look at your donation page, at the journey, what is your ask on the day in terms of Giving Tuesday? And how can you really make it clear that it's not just a one-off donation? If someone's really passionate about your cause, they can really follow up and continue donating to support you. Another example around Give It Tuesday is just to ask your supporters to donate goods. It could be an Amazon wish list. It could be something specific that you feel that you are in need and how you can really support anyone who actually needs that. And it's always useful because it's also coming up on Christmas, and Giving Tuesday this year is on the 3rd of December, which means it's a perfect opportunity to have your Christmas campaign just starting a bit earlier and encourage people to donate anything that they could really contribute. It could be socks, canned goods, anything that you feel that would really make a difference. And of course, you can also encourage people to give time to make sure that they can volunteer in a local organization. You can even encourage them to support your own organization. And it's just a proof that there are many different ways of making an impact. And Giving Tuesday, it's not always necessarily about you fundraising. It's also a case of being more creative and trying different ideas. If you're thinking of trying different ways to encourage people to participate during Giving Tuesday, it might be useful, as you can see also in these examples, to have some sort of menu for the options. So you could have a list of all the different ways that someone can participate. They might be more social, or they might want to try an offline event. They might want to fundraise for you, but you want to make sure that you have everything very clear on your website. It's a great way to just show that if someone is interested in supporting you, but they may not be ready to become a donor, they might want to spread a word on social media, or they might want to volunteer or to just motivate other supporters. So always have that list of options in any form, on an email, on your site, or even on social media. So now comes the next question. Once you start thinking of different ideas, how can you move your audience to action? This is where you start thinking of your campaign and your content and how to make your content more actionable in that case. This is a very useful graph that Kathleen sent over to us, and it's very helpful when thinking of a campaign and a big movement in order to understand your audience. You first need to start thinking that not everyone is at the same stage and they don't necessarily know everything that you do. So you could, for example, organize people in 3 different groups. There could be the people at the top. These are the folks who are at mission. They know everything about you. They are the big advocates. And chances are they might be more supportive, but still it's just an assumption. You also have the participants, the people on the periphery who pretty much know about your organization, but they might not be at the stage yet to be your donors. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they couldn't be very loyal supporters. And then you have the people who don't know anything about Giving Tuesday. They could be the rest of the public, those that might not even know about your organization. So you want to raise awareness to make sure that your content resonates with them, and you might actually move them into the next stage of the participants. So when it comes to thinking of your digital strategy around Giving Tuesday, you want to make sure that you do connect the dots between the one type of audience to the other. It sometimes seems as a challenge, but when it comes to content planning, you might just create different types of content that resonate with at least one of those audience. All you need is pretty much the planning, even for a few days before, on how can you really create the content with its different types of group. If you feel, for example, that you want to focus only on the advocates, you could still have a campaign and just try to use the language that makes more sense for those who do know about you. Then the next step, when you start thinking of your campaign, it has to do with all the different ways you can reach someone. It's useful to think of the multi-layered touch points, or else make sure that you reach your audience and the different types of people on many different channels. If someone is not on social media, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not interested in you. So it's useful to combine different channels. It might be advertising, social media, email, or even offline events. Giving Tuesday is not always about online activities. We've seen many great cases of offline events, volunteering, or even bake sales, something that's more productive and actually really generous. So start off the different channels and those that your supporters are spending more time, and have a think of how you can really bring them together. You need to have one messaging, but you want to make sure that you involve different channels. And then the next question is, what does the planning look like? How can I make sure that if I start right now, I can still have an idea of what I want to do? This is the planning of what's usually recommended from Giving Tuesday if you start a full-on campaign. So it's usually recommended, especially for the American organizations that are getting way more invested sometimes on Giving Tuesday because it started earlier. And for some of them, especially the big organizations, it makes sense to start early. So they might start 4 or 5 months ahead, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if you start now, which is 3 weeks before Giving Tuesday, that you can still run a successful campaign or even some content that still resonates on the day. So what we'd recommend in that case, even if you start today, is think of the planning, think of the audiences that we've mentioned and how you can really create content that resonates with them. Have a think of the channels and all the different touch points and start building your call to action. What do you really want to say on the day, and how can you make sure you reach your audience before the big day? It could be with email lists, it could be with Facebook groups, or any way that you can bring your volunteers together so that they know what's coming up and they're fully aware of your campaign before the launch date. And something that we would definitely recommend in case of getting the volunteers together is to have a think of the way you want to keep them engaged before the big day. It could be a calendar invite. You definitely want to make sure that they remember the day. So you could also mention that on social media several times before the day. It could be a reminder on a Facebook group, or just to make sure that everyone is aware of what's coming up. And you just want to make them in the end to look forward to it. You want them to feel involved and that they feel that they're really supporting you in a way that they can help you achieve great things. And then you want to keep in mind that you want to encourage more people to be generous. Giving Tuesday is a movement of generosity, and it's not just one day. You want to have long-term benefits. You want to build a relationship with your supporters. And as we've mentioned in the different types of audience, you might have an opportunity to turn the public into a supporter or the supporter into a donor. It might not happen overnight, but you do have an opportunity in a big day of giving to actually improve the relationship with your supporters. So now we're going into more details around the planning, and Gronia will share more details and the tips they're actually sharing with their partners on getting organized for Giving Tuesday.
Thanks, Treza. So, as Treza said, it's not exclusively a social media campaign, but it does happen a lot on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And so we have some tips and tricks for you about how to get the most out of it on social media. The Giving Tuesday hashtag trended in the #1 spot on the day last year from 8 a.m. until just after 5:30 and had over 600 million impressions. Twitter is the main social media platform that most people use when talking about Giving Tuesday in the UK. However, more and more people and charities are using Facebook and Instagram, and it looks like these will see an increase again this year. So what can you do with only 3 weeks to go on social media? First, you need to decide what you're going to do for Giving Tuesday. You could organise a fundraiser, a thankathon, an awareness raising campaign, or celebrate the work that you do day in and day out. The next step is to see if you can reuse your content and put a Giving Tuesday spin on it. You could add the Giving Tuesday logo to images that you already have and use the hashtag in your post. Or if you're doing something completely new, you'll need to create images and videos for each platform and have a plan for what you want to do on the day. Once you know what you have and what you need to create, it's a good idea to create a content calendar. This can include all of your channels, including website, press, internal, and social media, but you can also have a simpler version for social media only. It's so useful for seeing at a glance which days, times, and content is going out on which social platforms, and this will definitely save you time in the long run. There are tons of examples online to best suit your plans, and this is just one example you see on the screen from a Hootsuite blog. Here are some quick and simple content ideas for social media. If you sign up as an official partner via our website, you can tell your followers across your social media platforms. Remember to use the hashtag and tag us as well so we can share. We try to do shout outs to as many new partners as possible. Just a note that it's completely free to sign up. There's no cost to getting involved in Giving Tuesday, and there never will be. What the Giving Tuesday UK team does is to offer support and to help you with planning your campaign. You need to ask for support. If you don't have time to create your own social content, we've created loads for you to use on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can use these to tell your supporters to save the date or to ask for their support in lots of different ways, from volunteering to campaigning, and to help you count down to the big day. Or you can use your own pictures or videos from previous campaigns too. You want to share your plans. The next thing to post is about your plans and your asks. Tell people what you're going to do and how they can support you. This is an example on Instagram from the charity Station House Media Unit. They didn't have any pictures, so instead they used the Giving Tuesday logo, but they described what they're doing in their Instagram post. You could ask for volunteers. You can even use this time to ask for volunteers to join your charity. This is an example from the Royal Orthopaedic Hospital Charitable Fund. They've used the hashtag and tagged us so that we're aware of what's happening and can share their post with our followers. We've also got the Giving Tuesday Pledge. The Giving Tuesday Pledge is a chance to let your supporters, both current and potential, know what you would like them to do for you. For example, a dog rescue charity might ask for pledges to volunteer 2 hours every other week to walk dogs in their care. An older person's charity might ask to be included in a payroll giving scheme, or a children's charity might ask for toy donations at Christmas time. To get people to make a pledge to your charity, you can ask them on social media prior to Giving Tuesday and on the day itself. If you don't have time to create your own images, you can download the Giving Tuesday pledge assets from the website. So by now, you've got at least 6 pieces of content which you can post at different times of the day and throughout the 3 weeks. With the Lightful platform, you can start getting more organized for the campaign by scheduling some content ahead of time, and there's even a free version. Once your posts have been published, remember to check for any comments or shares. It's always best practice to acknowledge people who respond to your posts by answering questions or even just with a simple hello and thank you. If you want to create your own content or want to add a logo to an image, then use Canva. There are loads of templates for each platform and it helps you create different sizes from one image. Plus, it's completely free. On the day. So now it's the day of Giving Tuesday. What can you do on social media? Remember, this is your day, a day for charity. So go big. Don't be shy about posting often throughout the day. Ask your supporters to get involved with your chosen activities. Get them to share content or make a pledge to your charity. And don't forget to share and retweet your supporters' posts and engage with them. Send updates about your goal and thank donors along the way. Use lots of images, videos, and GIFs to get your messages to stand out. Most social platforms have built-in GIFs, so you don't need to worry about making your own. Also, please don't forget to use the hashtag Giving Tuesday and any others you may have created for your campaign and tag Giving Tuesday UK. Giving Tuesday trends every year, So be creative to get extra visibility. If you have a story to share from your organization or from a volunteer, then use Instagram and Facebook stories to tell people about it. Stories are now really popular and reach very many people. It's interactive and you can be as creative as you like. We have lots of tips and webinars that can help you how to use Instagram and Facebook around the stories, and we'll send those links in the follow-up. Here are some social media examples as well of how charities used Giving Tuesday to highlight their activities on the day. And as I said, we have a whole heap of partner stories on our website to give you some inspiration, and loads of social media toolkits and assets, guides and resources that are all free to download and to use, and will help you plan the day and hopefully make the most out of your Giving Tuesday.
And some takeaway tips of everything that we've discussed when it comes to planning your Giving Tuesday campaign. Remember, you don't need to start a completely new campaign when you're getting into Giving Tuesday. It could be a connection with your end of year appeal. It could be something you're planning around Christmas, or it could just be an opportunity to be more grateful for your supporters on the day and just engage with them. So you don't need to be afraid that you need a full planning or be ready 5 months in advance for Giving Tuesday. And as we've mentioned with all the different examples, Giving Tuesday is not just about fundraising. It could be a great online giving movement, and we've seen amazing examples, but if you feel that you're not at a stage to actually ask for donations, or if your organization is on a completely different direction, you can still join Giving Tuesday. You can try all the different ways to encourage people to donate time, goods, or just to do something nice for your community. It's useful to start planning your content in advance. It could be even just a week before, or now we're at 3 weeks before Giving Tuesday. Have a think of your call to action. What do you really want to say? And how can you really save time now before you get stressed on the big day? Have a think of the visual content that you want to involve. And Canva is a very useful online tool, as Gronia mentioned, because you don't need to be a designer to actually have nice images and graphics. And Giving Tuesday are also having some great assets on their website. So this way you can tell more engaging stories without necessarily having brand new photos on your own. Make sure you are engaging on the day. Try to interact with your team, with your supporters, share updates, and you can even be more casual. You don't need to be completely strict. It's nice to show a human approach and make the most of the day. And then once the big day is done, we've seen many organizations who actually spend the time, usually the day after, to thank their supporters. There is a hashtag called Gratitude Wednesday, and it's going very well because it reminds you that those who are actually spending the time to support the campaign, to spread the word, or even to donate for your organization, they do deserve some sort of acknowledgement. It doesn't necessarily mean that you should thank individually every single person, although we've seen some great examples with that. You could still have some messages that you thank all your supporters with a nice image or even a video with your team. And in terms of the resources, we'll make sure we send many links on the follow-up email. There are many things to check on Giving Tuesday's website. There is a social media toolkit, a comms planning, a campaign planning, and even some press release templates. And we'll make sure we send them all in order to make sure that you make the most of it. And in terms of the resources from Lightful, we've actually built some storytelling templates specifically around Giving Tuesday. We've had some charities who messaged us in the past and they felt completely overwhelmed by Giving Tuesday because they haven't tried that in the past, so they're not really sure how to start. So I've worked with a team to actually create a template that is specifically around Giving Tuesday, and it gives you some ideas on how to get started. For example, you go to create your story and it shows a pretty much frequent calendar on how to get started. It might be 3 weeks before. So it's telling you, how about sending a message to say that we're happy to join Giving Tuesday? Or how about reminding people that this is the big day and you want to schedule a tweet for that? So this way you just connect the networks. It's free to try it out, and I'll make sure I send the links, and you can schedule as many posts as you want just to get the team together. And you can also try the social media platform that we have. It's actually created for charities and nonprofits. And there is a free plan actually with unlimited scheduling. So even if you want to be creative on the day for Giving Tuesday, feel free to give it a try. And I'm also happy to answer more questions around that if you want to find out more. And now it's time for questions. Hopefully you find that useful, but we want to hear from you and just to make sure we answer all the questions you have. So feel free to ask us at the chat. There is a question about the recording. Yes, we'll make sure that we do send the recording and the slides to anyone, so don't worry if you've missed something. So there is an anonymous question at the Q&A. We use wonderful.org as a fundraising platform. Could we set up a new fundraising campaign on this site and share that with followers on the day? That way we can monitor the fundraising total. Could it backfire if we don't get many donations? I would say you can give it a try. Of course, it could count as a new fundraising campaign, but it doesn't have to be a really big campaign that you plan in advance. And if you feel that it feels that it doesn't have the donations that you have in mind, maybe you could just extend the campaign. It doesn't need to be necessarily just one day. And we've seen many campaigns that started on Giving Tuesday, but they continued, for example, throughout the rest of the month.
Yeah, and lots of charities actually use Giving Tuesday to shine a spotlight on a campaign that's already running. So again, as Teresa said, it doesn't need to be something new, but if you have something that's already running, you can use Giving Tuesday to maybe take a new approach and talk about it in a different way, or just have a bit more fun with it than what you would normally be able to do.
Sarah and Sophie said they find it really helpful. Happy to help.
One of the things that lots of people want to know is what are the benefits to signing up as a Giving Tuesday partner? So here in the UK, we ask people to sign up. It means then we can list you on the website as someone who's involved with Giving Tuesday. You also get some exclusive partner resources that we have. So exclusive partner logos and a campaigning toolkit, which are really useful. It also allows us to kind of engage with you a bit more because we have the contact and we can support you a little easier in what you're planning. If you go onto the Giving Tuesday website, we have lots of really incredible case studies from our partners, and it's always great being able to share what other charities have done, whether that be what they learned, what didn't go well, what their successes were based on, and what they're planning to do for next year. Giving Tuesday is a really incredible opportunity for sharing ideas, and we love to be able to do that and support our partners in that way.
And also feel free to message us at the chat to tell us what you're planning to do on the day. It's always good to hear different ideas. Well, don't see any other questions. I'm assuming it's also the time of the day when it's almost 5, but that's totally fine. There is no problem. We're going to upload the webinar, the recording and the slides online, and we'll make sure we send a follow-up email with Gronia. And if you need anything else that we can answer both of us, feel free to message us on Twitter or just reply on the email that you're going to receive. Thank you very much for joining today. Hopefully you find that useful, and we actually can't wait to see all the campaigns happening on Giving Tuesday. It's 3 weeks now?
Just
Less than
under.
3 weeks. Yeah,
Less than
getting
3
there.
weeks. Yeah.
Thank you very much again. Thank you very much, Gronia, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks, Teresa.
You're welcome. Have a great afternoon, everyone.